Greetings, geeks, and welcome to a very special edition of Wizards, the podcast guide to comics. I'm Adam, and recently for the holidays, we released a bonus episode where we were covering the first two Toy Fair specials. It was a beloved publication, of course. It feels like it became known as much for its zany comedy as for presenting the latest toy industry news and being a monthly action figure price guide. But where did it all begin? Well, tonight we are seeking to answer that question through a reunion of some of the original editorial team who pulled Toy Fair together in its earliest form. Yes, joining us tonight are Toy Fair editor Scott Beatty,
Whoop, whoop.
design manager Steve Blackwell, copy editor Andrew Kardon, and contributing editor Brian Cunningham. So before we get started here, I just want to ask this. How many of us have an action figure, a toy of some sort, just within arm's reach? It's just like you can turn and you see one. Yeah, there we go. Oh, Mego Spidey. Nice.
I'll one up you, Brian.
Oh, Nightwing. Another Mego Spidey. This is great. Spidey's all
Sorry,
around.
this is the original Mego Spidey.
Ooh, we are going to get into that. Yes.
It lasted one whole episode.
So now, obviously, we're all toy fans here, but I want to ask, in your mind, what is it about an action figure or a toy as a collectible that feels like it is just like always been something that's popular, always seems to endure, even to this day, all the more so it seems to just become more and more a thing in pop culture. What is it about action figures that captures our imaginations?
Yeah, to me, it just always felt like it was a way to take the two-dimensional and make it three-dimensional and let your imagination run wild. We didn't have a lot of other ways to kind of use our imaginations when we were younger. There was, and we weren't preoccupied with like easily available video. We had to entertain ourselves. So that's where it really started.
I think also we're all of the generation that was, right at the ripe age for Star Wars toys and Mego action figures and just about everything that came along before, during, and after that time. And this was really sort of a celebration. So, you sort of have the brain trust here. And I think, Andrew was more of a contributing editor and part of like the team that sort of came up with the mission statement for the magazine as we launched. And really the people that are missing, Tom Root, Tom Palmer, Doug Goldstein, and the beloved and late Pat McCallum, who passed away this past year and who we all loved and adored. The magazine, really came out of Pat and, his great and abiding love. I mean, you wouldn't have found a bigger kid than him. And he kind of allowed all of us, I think, on the Wizard editorial staff, Brian, I think, can attest to this, to be kids and not be afraid to be big, giant nerds and love it.
Well, and speaking of Brian, I got to ask, you were the first official toy columnist for Wizard magazine. So in the years leading up to Toy Fair, those first 5 years, how would you describe the reader's relationship with toys as collectibles and action figures? Was that a column in particular that was getting a lot of mail? Was there a lot of interest in that as a topic?
Yeah, we did get a lot of mail, and we did a lot of the homemade heroes with people, creating their own versions of characters. I still have some of them that have been sent to me. Someone sent me a oh boy, what was that character's name? The thermodynamic man, Equinox. Yes, yeah. Equinox, the thermodynamic man, who's basically half Iceman, half
not
Human
half.
Torch.
It radiates, Brian.
Oh my God,
Sorry.
nerds.
Yeah, I don't know who this guy is.
So the fact that those exist and people were so passionate about doing that, the more we got and the more we would show in the magazine, the more people responded to that. And I think people wanted to one up what they were seeing. So it was super fun. And, as time went on, we would see the fact that, toys exist for like I have a Prophet action figure, I have Bad Rock, I mean, like I have action figures for all these characters that I don't think it would exist if there was no market for that. And I think that entire generation of Image founders, Wizard founders, we all came of age at this time. That something Steve and Scott were saying earlier, it was kind of a perfect storm of interest, in this stuff. And I think we just wanted, as we got older, and we look back on our childhoods, there was a great fondness, obviously, for the things that we had, and probably didn't survive.
Yeah, and it did feel like at that point where Toy Fair was coming into existence and Kenner Hasbro started releasing Star Wars figures again after so long, that must have ignited a lot in you. And so I have to ask for you guys, what are your earliest memories of Toy Fair as a concept being rumored around the office? And then if not that, you're just being recruited into the project by Pat. What do you guys recall?
Well, I think part of me coming on board the magazine was to kind of take over the toy column, and then we sort of, I don't know, around that time Wizard was doing their first specials. Maybe like Toy Fair was maybe the 9th or 10th special. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, because you were there much longer. But we sort of created the atmosphere for it, and I don't know, it seemed there was so much product out there that the toy column was expanding, and it seemed natural. And I think that the powers that be, Gareb and everyone else, was looking for a more like Wizard product too. So I don't know, didn't it seem like the most natural extension at the time?
That did seem
after Inquest.
Yeah, no, that's definitely seemed the most natural. And like you said, it was a glut of product to talk about. So it wasn't like it was going to be a stretch. Like Inquest at times felt like it could be a bit too esoteric, whereas Toy Fair, I mean, there was so many things to cover.
I think that was part of the reason it came in existence. We were running out of room in Wizard. We kept giving it more and more pages, and we're like, oh, we should give this its own magazine. But we're doing the specials, and then we did a second special pretty quickly after the first. I was really surprised how quickly that turned into a monthly magazine, but it was fast.
Yeah, I think jumping off something Brian said too, with the Homemade Heroes and there was no character at that point that was too obscure. And I think we sort of taught the product managers at the companies that there's no small character. Even the background characters in the cantina, that guy that's in one frame, somebody will buy that. And when we did the Homemade Heroes that were dedicated to the top 10 Star Wars characters that you want to see, and of course we made it goofy, like Biggs Darklighter, or Porkins. Who was literally Porky, with a drumstick in his hand. That they loved it, and of course they looked at it. It's like, well, yeah, we'll have to get to that guy sometime. So,
and I'm curious for you guys, does anybody have a recollection of where the name Toy Fair came from? Obviously, Toy Fair existed as an event, but like as it was originally being promoted, it was just being called a toy price guide. It was being called a toy special. Like leading up to when the magazine actually hit racks, it was just like it didn't have the name Toy Fair immediately.
Steve, can you?
I just want to say that one of the most fun exercises to be part of was the naming of any Wizard product, yes, because it was so absurd, and the people who got to contribute to that, sometimes, like, literally the goal was to come up with the stupidest idea and throw it out into the room, and occasionally that would be the one that got picked. Not in this case, but like I want to say Poster Mania was literally a joke. It was somebody's idea of a funny idea, and they threw it out and it stuck, and it was like, okay.
Yeah, there were a lot of decisions made by clipboard that was passed around.
Yes.
So yeah. I don't recall. I remember that when I think the name was raised, I have some dim memory that was like, oh, that makes sense. That's total, it's better than Action Figure Insider or Tomart's Guide to Collecting. It just, claiming that name because of the popularity of the International Toy Fair was, I don't know, whoever came up with it should be clapped on the back, because that was super smart. And I do remember the design meetings with Steve, where you had the various logo treatments,
Yeah.
and Gareb being called down, and Pat in your cubicle, your office space,
Yeah.
which was an actual office, excuse me, it wasn't a cubicle. And I don't know, we were arguing over whether or not the final E should be
It should be
canted.
tilted, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that's kind of, playful. Let's do it that way. So, there was a lot of argument over that.
Well, and Steve, speaking of your contribution, obviously, designing this magazine, how did you go about trying to give Toy Fair its own uniqueness, but still invoking kind of the wizard style? Because there are very specific things you can point out when you look at the magazines, like you say, the logo specifically you were just mentioning, but then like right here, I'll point to this one, but like if you look, like you put these little marks on the end of every page.
Well, that's the idea. So, all right, so that came about because that's a circulation thing, right? So when magazines are on display, very often in the old days, in a newsstand especially, you basically, that upper left-hand corner of a magazine is gold. That's where everybody, like, you knew no matter what your facing was going to be on a rack, that part would be seen. So the idea was to brand this magazine with a device where people would instantly be able, even if they only saw that T and that little corner, they'd know that's Toy Fair. I got to grab that. So that's literally where that came from. That was a conscious choice based on magazine sort of tenets that we kind of lived by back in the day. But the rest of it, as far as it goes, like, so the idea was just find, because the design sense for Wizard, even though it evolved as we were evolving, the idea of trying to keep things cleaner, because you'll notice that once we hit past the 50s of Wizard into the 60s, everything started to get a lot more clean, and that's what we kind of started driving towards. And with Toy Fair, it was clean, and the idea was that colors and font choices that we built into this design were legible but playful. So that's where a lot of that stuff comes from in terms of the choices that we made for that.
Yeah, that's great. And so this is what I'm curious about, because in Pat's opening letter in the first winter special, he mentions that after he got the okay from Gareb and everybody upstairs to move forward with this toy special concept at the time, he called it like a mad dash to put that together in like 5 months' time. He said everybody's working 10-hour days. You guys obviously are doing Wizard and this toy special at the same time. So for the rest of you, what were some of your responsibilities at this time as it related to Toy Fair? Like Brian, did you have to take on extra work while other people were kind of stepping into the Toy Fair realm? Like, how did that work? What do you guys remember about what you were being put in charge of trying to prep Toy Fair?
I have to be candid with you. I have zero recollection of any involvement whatsoever. I may have been involved, and maybe the others have some recollection, but I really that whole period of time was kind of a blur. My only recollection was, I don't know if it was the Macarena that we came up with or Twisted ToyFare Theatre, but it was in White Castle, and it was Pat, me, and I believe it was you, Andrew.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's where we came up with the Macarena thing or just Twisted ToyFare Theatre. But that's where it started, in White Castle and that's my only recollection of really being involved in any early stage.
I think I can weigh in here, Brian. I mean, Brian was everybody here in this room right now was kind of deeply involved in the start, because I recall Pat pulling us all out to I don't know, where was it? It was a restaurant.
Probably Dave & Buster's or Rick's.
No, it wasn't Dave & Buster's. It was I don't know, like a Bennigan's. I think Bennigan's.
Oh, Bennigan's back in the day, yeah.
So, and lunch meetings at Wizard were epic, long. They were like a couple hours long with notepads and food and trying to create the thing. So, I shared an office with Andrew and Mike Searle, editor of Inquest, and so we were pulled in, and Brian and Doug Goldstein, I believe, and Doug and Steve. And the first meetings were about setting out what the content was going to be. So we weren't just going to be a price guide and a news source, that there was going to be entertainment, just like Wizard. And so, taking the idea that Twisted Mego Theater, that was already kind of germinating at that point, behind the scenes articles. I think Pat had a real passion for showing people how action figures were made. And I think we broke a lot of ground because we showed lots of young Hong Kong, workers, factory workers in their berets creating action figures, like stuff nobody would allow today because of, just how terrible the working conditions are. Doing the homemade heroes, but just like filling a full magazine. And then that cover concept, creating, we got this guy, Charlie Flatt, to create these hyper realistic Migos. And then we worked with him on going to a certain extent. He turned out to be, kind of he became a rock star and then had sort of some rock star attitudes as a result, but just kind of pulling it all together. And I think with everything at Wizard, the ideas came from everywhere and no idea was tossed out. We tried everything. We threw everything against the wall and put it on a whiteboard and, whittled out what wouldn't work or we didn't think would work. And then we, I don't know, inevitably come back to those ideas later.
Well, and no idea was met with, we can't do that. We found a way to make it work.
Let's have a Malamute test action figures.
Yeah,
Yes.
Because the guy was Jim
feature.
McLaughlin's buddy. So let's have Zach Malamute eat,
John Seals.
digest, chew, masticate, defecate action figures and then test them as a result. I mean, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And they're cool dogs.
Yeah, I got to tell you, so that's my favorite thing. The ultimate action figure stress test, and previously John Seals had done the comic book stress test in Wizard, and it upset some people. They did not like that there was destruction of these priceless pieces of art. But I want to ask you guys this while we're on the topic of Charlie Flatt and the Migos and everything. Why do you think the choice was made to use Mego figures so prominently on the covers when that style of toy and figure was not necessarily in vogue at the time? There were, some Star Wars 12-inch and 10-inch and things like that were coming out, but it wasn't the main thing that kids were buying at the time. And Andrew, I think you might have some insight as to why Mego was at the forefront of ToyFare.
Steve will probably have more from a design perspective, but my initial, I guess, gut is at the time most action figures weren't as articulated.
Yeah.
And which is actually why we went with Mego Spidey originally. It wasn't a Mego on the very first time. We were doing a Macarena. I don't remember which, it must have been a Toy Biz figure or something. Pat was trying to use, he couldn't get it to do the arms the way he wanted to. And I had my own little house of horrors in my office with all my Migos in horrific positions doing very bad things. So I remember him running in and saying, I need to borrow that. And he grabbed Spidey, ran back and said, this works so much better. And from there it went on. And I think beyond the articulation, it's just the way they look. Like the faces are so cartoony and expressive. They don't look like they're from the comic book.
And on top of that,
don't.
It's also, like you said, alluding to the quality of the image. When you shoot a smaller figure and you're blowing it up to 200 to 300% its original size, all the flaws are magnified tremendously. So that's why a lot of times, if we weren't shooting the Charlie Flatt figures that are fairly big, a lot of times from the designers like McFarlane, we got a handful of 2-ups, and they were huge. They were like 18 to 24 inches tall. Like some of these guys, Digger Phelps and some of the other like toy designers would come out with these things, and we would shoot those, and you get just a much better image for the cover.
Yeah, I'm still surprised to this day that so many toy companies trusted us with these 2-ups that were, worth tens of thousands of dollars, because there were, what they used to make the steel molds out of, and having to go back to scratch. And they sent them to us. We took loving care of them, covered them in all kinds of, all kinds of stuff, and then cleaned them up and returned them.
Yeah, Pat even alludes to in his editorial that some of them were lost and all these other things. Like it was a madhouse in those early days.
It was crazy.
But obviously,
I was going to say, I just think from early on, Mego Spidey became sort of the spiritual. Mego Spidey was Pat's id.
Yeah.
Allowed, like, let loose. There was no crime too bad for Mego Spidey, and allowed Pat to be just as crazy as he wants to be on it. And what's so funny was Toy Biz let us do everything. Marvel had no complaints. DC, I mean, we were so, I don't know, below the radar. And then when we were above the radar, they appreciated the press, I think. So, no one sent us a cease and desist.
DC did.
DC
Well,
did?
Starro Cookie.
Yeah, we could not use DC stuff after a while. We
Oh,
had to actually, in reprints, we had to go back and change all the costumes.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, wow. Well, Starro the Cookie came after me. So that must have been under Matt Senreich's or someone else's, Zach
I want to say that was like the 8th issue or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
wasn't
sure.
that far in, but yeah, we ended up having to really in every reprint for the collections, we had to go back and change. Like, we couldn't use the full-on DC strips, and ones where characters would show up a little bit. We had to alter the costumes to make it look like, it's like Superman's costume went to like purple and yellow or some shit.
Okay. We got hauled, before the companies for Hellfire, Helena, like the sort of the Morts of the Month characters, the really bad action figures, they were really upset. And we had to have a special ambassador to Toy Biz because we made fun of the very first Lara Croft Tomb Raider figure. And that involved sort of a sit down with the feuding, mafia families. So that was fun. Yeah, I had my butt handed to me, in a Manhattan office on that one.
Well, I remember, like, in the first top 10 action figures list, you guys were just ripping the Leia figures, both of them. Like there were 2 of them, and you guys
Monkey face
Leia, yeah. So I'm sure they weren't super thrilled about that. But obviously, Twisted ToyFare Theatre, Twisted Mego Theater originally became the breakout feature of the magazine. It was huge. Like you said, many collected editions. It was reprinted, laid the groundwork for Robot Chicken, long-running TV series. But is it safe to say, would you guys feel that ultimately ToyFare was kind of viewed as more of a Mad Magazine style humor publication than just Wizard for Toys? Like, would you imagine?
That's fair.
Yeah. No, I think there was far more attention and space given to comedy in that magazine than any other thing we did. And it was, again, as I think, one of you guys just said, I mean, it was a way for Pat to let all of his stuff out, and also to give other people an opportunity, because the collaborative nature of the comedy in ToyFare, like we said before, so many of those jokes were clipboards. Like, they would send out pictures of a clipboard with a stack of the big shots, and people would just contribute what they thought would be the best caption or word balloons, and whoever made it got highlighted as the one that made Pat laugh the most. They made the cut.
Yeah, the big shots. Tom Palmer, assistant editor, was charged with photographing random action figures together with staff. I mean, literally, Paul Schiraldi was staff photographer. I mean, he was freelance, but we hired him for every single issue. And I mean, most of our budget was Paul, right, Steve?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and those were all clipboard jokes. But even things like, Pat would have an idea where, hey, Mego Spidey loses his pants, and so throughout the issue, randomly, he's going to pop up pantsless. Or we're going to hide McFarlane Toys Izzes, those little creatures from the Max, randomly throughout. And if you find all of them, you win, the sweepstakes for whatever that issue was. I mean, every page had some added joke, right up until press time, really. I mean, we always worked because we had a small staff, and we always, we called upon Andrew and Brian and whoever else to help us get out the door, because we were like literally 3 people when the magazine was full time. But just jamming stuff in right up until the very last minute.
Well, and as I think we mentioned in the Pat tribute issue episode, the Twisted ToyFare Theatre he recognized the value as the marquee piece within that magazine, and like that he sweated every single word balloon. I can't even tell you how many times he rewrote that until it went out the door. It was a constant thing until it was already, look, if this doesn't go now, it doesn't see print.
That goes for the whole magazine. Every single word balloon in that magazine you looked at.
Yeah.
No, I mean, my role in Twisted ToyFare Theatre, I was usually among the last people to look at it, because Pat would hand it to me and ask me, hey, which words do we need to bold italic?
Brian, weren't you also the one was like, is this too far? Weren't you kind of the voice of reason? Like, did we push it too far?
You had one of those?
I think Brian was.
I think on rare occasions I might have played that role, but I mean I don't think I think it would take a lot for something to really go too far. I mean, because the general nature of of that whole section was to push it far. So
Yeah. I think Pat set the bar really high with the first one with Super Villain Jeopardy, because those were some of the most awesome Migos at the time. Dr. Doom, Alex Trebek. We did the first Alex Trebek toy, teeny tiny little Mr. Mind that looked like it was made out of marzipan.
My favorite.
And Red Skull. Well, we couldn't do Red Skull in 2022. I'm sorry, guys. There's just no way.
Well, you could. You just couldn't. You couldn't do
use the swastika.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But that wasn't going to happen with us anyway.
Yeah, but that one kind of, and it really should be said. Credit to Matt Senreich and Seth Green and Doug Goldstein and Tom Root, but really the roots of Robot Chicken are in Toy Fair magazine, and with what Pat and later Tom Root. It got to the point with those meetings, the Twisted ToyFare Theatre meetings, where I just kind of stepped back and let those guys do it, because they were hours long, took half days, and then the shooting of it was like a 1-day shoot that turned into a 5-day shoot sometimes.
Usually, there's a lot of reshoots usually too.
Yeah, we blew the budget on Twisted ToyFare Theatre, Twisted Migo Theater from the start. So
one of the best and worst things that happened is when I finally set up our own digital studio, because then we saved a lot of money, but that meant he could keep reshooting later.
Well, do you guys ultimately have a gag that stands out to you from Twisted ToyFare Theatre, like, or just like a word balloon or caption, just something that always kind of, maybe you came up with it, maybe it was just something that had you laughing? Is there anything that comes to mind from over the years? Because I know there's obviously a lot to try and remember.
Anything Migo Hulk said.
Yeah, Migo Hulk. That's what I just popped in my head. Like, didn't he have a thing where he had the runs in Dr. Doom's
That's
house?
the one I remember too.
Yeah.
I remember him punching the air or something, and it was the Invisible Woman, and basically it just turns into like blood.
Wasn't there a body that Migo Spidey and Migo Hulk had to hide?
Had to bury. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that kind of stuff that kept us out of Toys R Us, ultimately. We had a very serious meeting with the brain trust upstairs about getting into Toys R Us. And, we sort of had to argue that the content wouldn't be seen by small kids because it was polybag. And so we just need to put a label on it. But they were really trying to get us into Toys R Us. And we're like, look, we are who we are. If we change it, then we're going to lose the readers. And I think we were building steadily. I think part of the success of it was that each month our numbers increased and we were on a rise. And, Wizard was, exceedingly popular, and Inquest was popular, but we were swiftly nipping at their heels and, showing that, that we were a legit magazine too.
Yeah, and I'm curious because you guys mentioned this a little bit earlier, some lists that you would put together, and you'd say, figures we'll never see, figures we want to see. Obviously, in Wizard, for a long time, there was the wish list feature. And Avi Arad himself said in an interview in that first winter special that he would refer to the Wizard magazine lists, and I'm sure that carried over to Toy Fair, to consider, okay, what do the fans want and what are we going to produce? Did you guys ever process that? Were you like, you know what? I've always wanted this figure to get made. I could add it to a list and it's probably going to go into production within a year or two. Did you ever think to use the influence of the magazine in that way?
I would have had a Manhunter action figure made.
Oh
yeah. I know if I had known the power then, I don't know. I think we were too busy cracking jokes, trying to get the product out, and we were a drain on Pat's time. And I dimly recall at some point they had to, I think Jen Cavallo maybe had to work out a schedule. Mondays and Tuesdays were Wizard. We could have Pat on Wednesdays or something like that. But his days had a schedule because we were a drain on his resources at times, and he had 3-4 magazines to run at any given day.
I guess I would ask as a follow-up to that, is there a moment where you guys recognize hey, like you said, it was slowly building, but wow, Toy Fair is really making an impact, people are loving it, or manufacturers, companies are giving us access we didn't have before? Like, is there a moment where you were kind of like, you know what, this was a pretty cool feature we were able to put together, but wouldn't have happened, 3 or 4 years ago if we asked?
For me,
When
I
you're
think
in it, it's really hard to see that. I think
Yeah.
you're kind of in the weeds. I think, like Scott said before, it's kind of like we knew month to month the numbers were going up, and for literally for when you're in the magazine business, that's the only thing you want to hear. So that's your sign for success. Keep doing what we're doing and more of it.
Now,
I think we
oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
we opened up trade secrets more than any other magazine at the time. Like nobody was like talking about two ups or the molds or the stuff, the proprietary information that the toy companies were a little reluctant to reveal everything. And so we kind of demystified the toy making process for a lot of collectors and buyers. And then we were entertainment too. I mean, we made it entertaining, but we got sculptors like Claymore to just show us like Lady Death in progress and other things, and just getting the prototypes and saying like, hey, this is coming out a year from now because it's got to come on a boat from Hong Kong after being manufactured and painted by little Chinese girls with because their hands are small enough to do the eyes and stuff like that.
Nobody else was talking about these companies like this. Nobody was making it. Some of the other magazines that existed may have touched on some of the topics, but they certainly weren't delivering it in a way that fans found more as accessible
or fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Pat, made the price guide fun, because I don't think Pat ever cared about a price guide other than, I don't know. I mean, Pat wasn't a mint on card guy at all.
No.
He played with his toys, he set them up, and that's kind of I mean, everybody in the office, every office space and shelf was filled with toys, so we were all fans of the material. We weren't just writing about it, we lived it.
Yeah.
Greetings, geeks. Adam and Michael here, and we want to tell you that support for Wizards, the podcast guide to comics, is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Now, here's the thing, guys. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0 is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. And guys, they sent it to us, and it has been a fantastic experience, wouldn't you say, Michael?
I would say so. And let me tell you, you should join the over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer of 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code Wizards20 at manscaped.com.
So here's the thing, geeks. We get excited about grooming nowadays, and it's been a new experience for me, at least. I feel like Michael's probably a little bit more on the personal grooming side of things lately, and I'm just saying like, hey, it's a whole new experience. It's a whole new way of life here.
I think he just called me a pretty boy there.
Oh, man. I mean, it's one of those things where I said, I'm a hairy guy. I just have to deal with it. And Manscaped has taught me that there are alternatives, okay? I'm getting familiar. First of all, I just want to share this with you, okay? This is their Lawnmower 4.0, okay? The Lawnmower 4.0 is so awesome. It looks like something that would be in the Bat Cave, if you ask me. Just like,
dude, not only that, like, did you see the cradle that this thing comes with? Like, it's a really interesting docking station that it doesn't plug into anything. It charges inside the thing. There's no like USB port or anything on the bottom that it clicks into because it's waterproof and you can use it in the shower. And I'll tell you, like, I've been shaving my head now for like 4 years, and I've tried so many different products, and I try using them in the shower, and they all have some sort of port, and they short out over time. I used this thing, and it really did a fantastic job on my bald head here, which is, you can't even believe it. And I only had to use this. And you should see the amount of products I have, like razors, and I've got your, 7-blade razors and this, that, and the other thing. I used just this device on my head, and it worked fantastic. I even used it on my neck, on my beard, worked incredible. I'll also say, like, I've got a weird, like, nose, ear, hair issue. So I checked out the Weed Whacker, and I've tried a lot of different like nose cleanup things. This thing not only did it work really well, but it was actually kind of gentle on my nose. Like it didn't hurt me and like
Yeah, it's
rip my
super
nose out of my
gentle.
head.
Like it's one of those things where I was amazed. I was just like, shouldn't it be buzzing? Shouldn't
I
it
was
be
like, is it
more?
working? And I looked, I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, it really cleaned up the inside. I was pretty impressed.
Like there is a reason why they work so well, and that's because this is their 4th generation trimmer, right? This is the 4.0. They've been doing it for a while, and it has this cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents.
I've cut my head so many times. This thing, it felt like I was barely even touching it. It just went right up, no problem.
Yeah,
I
it
was
has
really
advanced
impressed.
skin safe technology to help you to prevent any of those things. You're going to do your best you can. Of course, you're going to be careful with it. Plus, Michael, I don't know if you tried it out because you're back here, you're up here, I'm down there, and doing a little lawn mowing myself, and they have the light on it, this 4,000
Yes, the
LED
light.
spotlight, and it's just like, oh, I see exactly what's going on. Oh, hello, old friend.
You don't want to miss there, let me tell you.
Yeah, so here's the thing. If you are interested in getting the Performance Package 4.0, it's also a great gift for the holidays. Hey, have a little fun. Tell somebody they need to take care of their balls. They might get a kick out of it, you know? So like we said, it's going to give you the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, spritz, Performance Boxer briefs, and that Shed travel bag.
So if you go to manscaped.com and use the promo code WIZARDS20, you'll get free worldwide shipping and 20% off your entire order. So it's a great opportunity. The free shipping thing is huge. Like so many places now, every time you go, oh, I got to pay this $8 shipping, you're getting a lot of stuff. And this box was heavy. There's a lot of stuff in this thing. And it was free shipping, 20% off. It's a fantastic deal. It's a great holiday gift. I think people will love it. And I'm telling you right now, they might look at you like, why are you giving me this thing? They're going to thank you later. Trust me.
100%. So get your 20% off and free shipping with code WIZARDS20 at manscaped.com. That is 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code WIZARDS20. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Now back to the show. Now, obviously, a big part of what continued to occur in the magazine monthly was also the exclusive mail-away figures that you guys offered from the very beginning. Like, that's what's amazing. It's like, first thing out, we're going to release a Molten Man exclusive figure, which actually led to quite a few angry letters, people who got, return mail of their order forms because you guys didn't order quite enough that first time out. But then, going into things like, Kitty Pride, coming around, and that was a great one that people loved.
She can't breathe. Open her.
She just has to
she can phase through it.
Yeah.
I want to say with Molten Man, I think that was a conversation I had with Pat. I think I had a role in coming up with how we could make that figure. And then that often happened. Like the Daredevil figure was very like the arm, the black and red armor. Like that was an easy one. I think we came up, that might have been a clipboard too.
Yeah, I know we had this one too eventually.
Yeah, that's the one I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember looking, I think we were looking at your toys, Brian, and saying like what parts could be repurposed. I mean, the kind of the figure bashing in order to, come up with something new.
And so
yeah, like
the idea was to keep the cost down for, like Toy Biz or whoever the partner was at that time. So the idea was to try and give them an easy yes. Yeah. We would never make that figure.
So you can say like, okay, we're just going to repaint a Flash figure, and now it's Professor Zoom. Okay,
that was my idea.
I love
that. I championed that. I couldn't wait for that to come off the truck. Daily, I don't know who. I think it was Ben Plavin. I annoyed Daily, like, is it here? Is he here?
And there wasn't Eradicator one that just hadn't been released. It was planned for the Man of Steel line or something. And then
after we got to know the toy companies and we knew like what wasn't going to come out, we're like, hey, we can share the cost of producing this and do it as an exclusive. It gives you street cred because you're making a figure that they normally wouldn't get, and then we get an exclusive. So those were really cool ones to do.
And so that was a team effort. That was just everybody kind of coming to go, okay, for this month, let's brainstorm who can we get into production and ready for the next issue.
Well, and one of the driving like people involved in that was the circulation guys, Stu Morales in particular. The idea was every issue had to have an exclusive to drive sales, like, because you knew that like you said, the first issue sold out very quickly. That became the golden ticket, right? Every issue had to have an exclusive to keep pushing those sales numbers.
Yeah, our learning curve was steep on that, because once we figured out how to do it and the companies trusted us, we started to do like several at a time. Like we had Kitty Pryde in production at the same time as Bullseye and someone else, and they got better. Like Molten Man was really simple, and then they got more complex the further we went along. And I mean, again, yeah, the golden ticket, like you had to buy the magazine and open it up because it was polybagged in order to get the order form.
Somebody specifically said that when they were mad about their Molten Man figure, like, I only bought it for the figure. And then you guys said, well, we'll refund your money. Sorry, but we're pretty sure it's very entertaining if you actually read it. But as we're kind of coming to a close here, have any more memories shaken loose, or are there things about working on the magazine that you feel need to be shared, some behind the scenes concepts? Again, like you say, for you guys, it was the day job, it was the grind, it was we got to get this done. But is there something about Toy Fair that's like kind of the warm and fuzzy memory for you?
The early covers were some of the most fun I had. Because we got to, like, we literally were building these sets and like that first one in particular, the AT-AT. Scott knows what that was like. I mean, I had to build this platform that was gigantic, and then we went through like 100 boxes of cornstarch to build all the snow mounds, and had this giant photo blown up of the background, because before you could really, like, digital stuff was, it was much harder to pull off back then. So it all had to be kind of real effects.
Yeah.
And, it was doing that stuff every month was just, that was a blast.
The photo backdrop for the AT-AT was a couple $100. Hasbro sent us the prototype. And then, we had Dan Riley and the research guys cleaning it with teeny tiny toothbrushes to make sure all that 100 pounds of cornstarch was off so that we could return it. And they loved it. Hasbro loved it, and it made a great poster in addition to the cover. I think that's another one of the added value things in the polybag.
Yeah, what's funny is Arlene she sent us a picture a couple months back. She was just out at a convention. She found that Toy Fair poster, of the AT-AT, and I thought that was hilarious.
I remember when Pat showed me that cover, because I wasn't involved at all in the making of it, and he showed it to me, and I was blown away, and I could see he was so pleased by my reaction, because that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted people to be able to see this and be just completely inspired looking at this thing. It was incredible. It really was.
I think one of my favorite memories was when we did the small soldiers toys.
Oh yeah,
can attest to this. We gave these toys to Steve and said, figure it out, do something with it. And they didn't tell us what the movie was about. We got the prototypes not knowing, the movie was a bomb, but like the toys were cool. And Steve, you went through what, like 6 or 7 different photo ideas. And in the end, what did you do?
I finally settled on a worm's eye view to make them look big. And it turned out that was actually kind of the visual thrust of the movie, was that it was, the camera was pushed down to make them look like they were real things instead of these small toys.
But it was in front of a tire. You took it to the parking lot and shot it in front of like somebody's car.
Yeah.
So Andrew, I'm curious for you, like, as you were contributing to the magazine over the years, obviously you said you still have the original Mego Spidey. How many appearances did that figure make ultimately before you reclaimed
Pretty
it?
sure it was just not even an issue. It was just that strip that was in, I think, Wizard, the Macarena.
Okay.
Or the first special. That was about it. And then we started spending a fortune hunting for actual Megos.
Yeah, I think we had like 6.
Yeah, we had a lot of Mego Spideys.
Stunt Spideys. Yeah, we used yours a lot, and then we kind of were ruining it, so we had to buy you a new one and then buy a bunch of extras just for that one strip.
Yeah, for people who aren't aware, because this has been mentioned on previous interviews some of you have done on the Wizard Files, but can somebody explain the toy archive that you guys had and how you kept that? Because I think a lot of people would be excited to be, because they saw so many toys in the magazine, but they're like, did they keep all those?
There was cabinets in the back.
Yeah,
it's not as exciting as it sounds.
there there was a small locked room in the warehouse that
Yeah.
became the Inquest, Magic the Gathering, valuable card archive, and then we took some spots in it too. But every action figure had its own unique cardboard box, and they were labeled. And the research guys had everything where we needed it, when we needed it.
People don't understand that of all the unsung heroes from Wizard, Dan Riley.
Yep.
Was like, there was nothing he wouldn't get done. If you gave it, like, literally at one point for one project Pat was working on, he needed a werewolf, like a physical and Dan built a werewolf in the back.
That's amazing. Wow. I mean, yeah. So obviously, the magazine is the magazine, I feel like, from Wizard Press that is most beloved, that never was controversial. Like you guys are mentioning, maybe, with the corporations, that didn't want to put it in their stores or things like that. But like among the fans, among people who read it, there, Wizard has its share of criticism over the years, and that could just be tied into the speculator market of comics and all those things. But when it came to Toy Fair, people just love it so much. Everything they say is kind words. Do you guys think you have an understanding as to why that would be? What is the difference between Toy Fair and Wizard, being so close, but yet one was maybe held in a higher esteem over the length of the run?
I think it comes down to the approach, because a lot of the things that Wizard got criticized for, like the top 10 comics writers and artists list, were always criticized. They were always something that got looked at as if that was something that people bought their way onto, and things like that. And there was no such way to do that in the toy action figure industry. It was generally just about celebrating it, and without really there was no way to kind of sneak in that negativity.
I think I said this the last time I was on this podcast. It took me many years to kind of come to this conclusion, but I don't think we would have the place we are today with comic books and toys without Wizard and Toy Fair and Wizard Entertainment. I mean, the guys in this room and all the other people that aren't in this room and all that came before and after, and Pat McCallum is the guiding force, really the guiding creative force. That there wouldn't be an Avengers Endgame moment where Captain America picks up Mjolnir, and have that everybody cheering in a movie theater, if not for the atmosphere that Wizard and Toy Fair and Wizard Entertainment created fandom, the fan environment, and made it legit, because we all challenged the industries. We challenged the creators, we challenged the companies. If it was a turd, we said it was a turd. And I just I think we've all been a part of all of these businesses, but we realize that the fan community that has spawned like this cultural high point for comics and toys, that's Wizard. Wizard did that, and Pat led us into the fray. So,
well, like you said, the thing with it is he created a home for people who felt, like most of us, felt more isolated in that fandom when we were growing up, and he made it a party. He gave us a home, and he gave all these fans a place to come and celebrate their fandom and not feel like it was odd, weird, strange. It was to be celebrated.
And that just made it cool or fun. He made it actually, this is where you really want to be. We're cooler than people who aren't doing this stuff. And look at it nowadays. Everyone's, you can't, go anywhere without seeing a Captain America shirt on somebody. It still blows my mind. It's a little crazy.
They made a movie with Rocket Raccoon. That's all I got now.
How about an Ant-Man?
Are we wrong, Brian? I mean, you were there, and you were, the guiding force behind so much of this.
I don't know. I mean, I think I lack the perspective. I just, one of the things I learned at Wizard was you really want to get to know a subject. Don't talk to the subject. You get quotes from everyone who knows the subject, and you'll get more candor and you'll get more truth. I'm not that. I don't think I'm the right person to ask for that. I mean, I know we did our best. That's quite a responsibility.
Well,
you've laid out there.
I think it's the genuineness. It's like you say, it was a legitimate passion from the people in the bullpen, for the people in editorial trying to push these things forward that they cared about and they knew so many other people cared about. And it definitely came through to all of us who were reading it. So, your work certainly paid off. Everybody, who was contributed, like you said, Scott, before and after, like it all added up together to this thing that is so fondly remembered. So we
I
really
think we
do,
pulled back the curtain, and we let everybody in on the creative process. We demystified it, and also just allowed everybody, like, we held the door open, said, everybody come on in, this is how it's done. You can stand behind Todd McFarlane and watch him draw, or you can watch this action figure being created. And I think I don't think we'd have what we have today without. I think the impact of Wizard is so important. We're going to look back on this, and we're going to Monday morning quarterback it to death, but academically, I don't think we'd be here today if we didn't have, through the 90s, when everything was happening and all these creators were coming up, to really appreciate all this the way we do now.
It's like I'm still, because when we were doing it and we're in the middle of it, it's just, it's just get it done and do it well.
And do it again next month.
And do it again next month, and so on. And it's a grind, like any deadline oriented business. It never ends. And the fact that we're talking about this, ToyFare special and the origins of that, and just how it spawned from Wizard, and I can't wrap my brain around the fact that there are people that love this stuff so much, like yourself, that you invited the four of us on here to talk about this stuff. I think that's it's hard to believe, but because we were just doing what we loved and we did the best we could with what we had to work with at the time. It wasn't always fun, but it was mostly fun.
It never felt like I was working. I'm just saying. It was hard work, but it never felt like I was working.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. It wasn't easy, but we made it work. People like what we did, and it's really gratifying that people now look fondly back on it.
Yeah, and I will tell you, it's not just two crazies over here with a podcast telling you how great you were, because literally every time that we post something from Toy Fair, especially, and all of our Wizard things, like we get like a ton of new, followers on social media. Oh, I just found out, I can't believe it. I had every Wizard magazine. I loved it so much. They're at my parents' house. I'm gonna go get them. And then they show us their pictures. Like they're so proud. Just like, I read it every month. I reread this issue so many times. So like it wasn't disposable, and it's not forgotten. It meant so much to a lot of people. Sometimes they just need that little nudge, like, remember? Oh yeah, I remember. They just can't get enough. So, well, again, you guys, this has been so much fun just to get your thoughts and hear your memories. And like I say, a lot of people are going to be enjoying this look behind the scenes at Toy Fair. But this is something where I'm sure there will be more to come in the future. We'll probably dip into the Toy Fair world once again, and people can have a little bit more excitement in reliving those times. But is there anything at this time you guys want to point us in the direction of? Any projects you're working on right now?
I still do a toy blog, mostly for the free toys, so, and I just like to keep up with it. Yeah, Toy Fair really, opened me up to it. I just wrote an intro to a DC Comics Silver Age collection that came out this week, Batman in the Silver Age. And I have a comic book with Chuck Dixon called Unprepped. It's sort of a post-apocalyptic comedy that came out. So I still do some writing, but I teach mostly now. I'm really fortunate. I get to teach the next generation of creative writers at a charter arts high school. It's kind of like Fame, there's dancing and singing in the hallways. So that's a lot of fun.
Great.
I still collect.
Are those the 50th anniversary Migos?
Yeah, I just got them today.
Luckiest kid ever, Brian.
I would have killed for either one of these when I was a kid. I would have killed for these.
I was in London over the summer, and I killed for a Green Arrow Migo, and I got him.
Well, wonderful. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will sign off for now. Until next time, hey, Keep those figures on the card, or don't. They're more fun to play with.